为什么我们在疫情当中更加需要白求恩精神？ We know doctors form essential parts for this very effective response to the COVID-19 pandemics. They have critical roles in the treatment, and their commitment to treat despite increased potential personal risk is essential for a successful public health response. So we're so glad to have Dr. Errett, the president of the Biomedical Development Association of Canada, George and James Wan Chair in Global Surgery, Professor of Surgery at the University of Toronto, to share with us why we need more Bethune spirit in the COVID-19 pandemics.
Thank you for the introduction, and thank you for the invitation to be here today. I very much appreciate it, and I remember it seemed like a long time ago that we met before. I'm going to change the tune a little bit from a scientific basis, and I'd like to remind Dr. Nye that everybody is a VIP to somebody. What I chose for the topic was the Bethune spirit in the COVID pandemic. And I'll tell you a story about what happened to the Bethune Medical Development Association of Canada during COVID-19. But first, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about Bethune, to remind you that he was just a normal person. This is where he lived in Gravenhurst, Ontario. Many of you have seen his house and been to the exhibits there. And his father and mother were clergy. His father was a minister and his mother was a missionary, and they had traveled and settled in Gravenhurst. He didn't live a remarkable childhood. He went to school, he was an average student. And he didn't, when he went to high school, he didn't go to university initially because they couldn't afford it. One of the things that's peculiar about him that a lot of people don't know, that he didn't have full respect for his father. He didn't think his father was definitive enough or to make a decision, to act upon the decision. And that's one of the reasons it's thought that he changed his name from his father's name to his grandfather's name, to Norman from George. And Norman Bethune actually, the first Norman Bethune was a doctor at the University of Toronto, was a surgeon. So he was actually preceded Dr. Bethune becoming a medical doctor at the University of Toronto. Next slide, please. That's a picture of him graduating in 1916. Before he went to complete his graduating studies, he went over to the war in France. And he didn't, that would be the First World War. And he didn't stay there that long because he got injured and had to come home to convalesce. But if you zoom ahead 20-some years, he had the inclination to go to China. This is when there was no internet, there was radio, there was TV, no TV, there's radio, and there was newspapers. That's how he got his information. And yet he had that spirit to go to a far-off land to help people that were being oppressed by another nation. It seems a different spirit than a lot of us have. And where that came from has always been a mystery to me. He met with Mao once, on one occasion. This is not a photograph, this is a painting. That meeting must have been extremely important to both of them, because they both remembered each other. Mao said that had the eulogy that he wrote after Bethune died. And Bethune wrote Mao several times during his time in China, but Mao apparently didn't respond. There was the respect that they had was in a spirit, not only a need for help, practical need. Next slide, please. Because Bethune was a surgeon, and he used those skills to help not only the soldiers, but all the people that were around him. Next slide. He actually created booklets of how to teach young people first aid. That was well beyond the scope of a military doctor. He treated children, and he treated the children so they could treat other children, or they could treat their own family. Next slide, please. And he was not afraid, of course, to go to the front lines. And that's what endeared him to the Chinese people, that he was risking his life to save theirs. Next slide, please. Prior to going to China, he spoke at the Society for Medicine and Surgery in Montreal and said this: the problem of medical economics is part of the problem of world economics and is inseparable and indivisible from it. Now, he said that back in the 1930s, and that is as true today as it was then. And I believe that's a very profound statement. It seems obvious at first, but if you take our situation, we're practically 90% vaccinated in Toronto, and in the continent of Africa has 7% vaccination. So that it's a problem of economics, the medical economics and the world economics. Next slide, please. Now, the Bethune Medical Development Association has traveled to China many times. I've personally been to China 23 times. But we've traveled to 160 different locales, 160 hospitals or universities, all over the populous part of China. So we've got to know a lot of people there. We've created a lot of friendships and networks, and in fact, brought 142 Chinese people to learn here at Toronto, at the University of Toronto. 142 of them. So we've developed a special bond with a number of those people. But as you can see, we traveled to Wuhan, 3 hospitals in Wuhan, so we get to know that city pretty well. About Wuhan, it's got probably one of the best airports in the world. Next slide, please. When the idea of an infectious agent was coming by, they thought maybe this was like 2009. It would just go away. Maybe it would be SARS. It would be short-lived. And lots of commentation was made, 10 reasons why you don't need to panic. And even at the bottom of the slide here, when Mr. Trump tells Americans not to worry, and he also said it's going to go away when the weather gets warmer, and that sort of thing. And so initially, there was not much concern about the COVID. Next slide, please. Whoops. However, also in the early part of 2020, there were about 50,000 cases in Hubei province and Wuhan, and there were 4 cases in Ontario at the time. Now, we got together with the Bethune Medical Development Association, which I'm the president of and representing today, and we said we should do something about this to help. But what can we do as a very tiny organization to help people in Wuhan? Well, we thought about it, and we thought maybe we should ask our colleagues in Wuhan what they need. Next slide, please. To my surprise, one thing they said they needed was an ECMO device. ECMO devices are a complicated system of replacing the lungs for the body. It stands for extracorporeal membrane oxygenation. And with that machine, you can take out the dark blue blood, oxygenate it, take away the CO2, and then put back oxygenated blood. And it seemed to me that was a little different because we use ECMO in North America on adult patients, and it's not that effective when we use it for the heart situation. That's when we tend to use it, when the heart fails. But it's actually for the lungs. So their experience in China was much, much better than ours. They had 70% success rate when they put this device in a patient, which is very invasive, put it into a vein in their leg, or an artery in their leg, or 2 veins. When they did that, they actually had this success rate of 7 out of 10 people, which was quite remarkable. Next slide, please. And that was borne out in the critical care of this type of device being utilized in China. And the Chinese actually used it more appropriately than it was in the rest of the world, because they've had experience in 2009, and they've had use in all over the nation. So when we thought they needed this device, it made sense to us because they can have the experience to use it more efficiently and more effectively than we do. So we looked into the ECMO devices, and they're expensive. They're about $100,000 each. So our idea was to get 3 of them. So we went to the company, and we made a deal with the company that they would give us for sale the demonstrator machines, if you like. They're perfectly good. They're brand new. They've never been used on a patient, for half the price. Plus, we needed the tubing to go along with it, which would cost extra money. But the Bethune Medical Development Association doesn't have any money. We're all volunteers. So we had to raise money. Next slide, please. So I wrote a letter, and we put it on WeChat to the Chinese diaspora of Toronto, basically. And we asked for support, and our goal was to help at least 100 patients. So if you helped 100 patients, from what I said earlier, theoretically, you can save 70 lives. And believe it or not, there's not many doctors that can go and say, I saved 70 lives in the last month. There's not many people that can say that at all. It would be actually almost a miracle to do that. So anyway, we had the machines at a fairly cheap price. We had the will to get the other devices that we needed, and we put out to the people, mostly in Toronto, and we raised in 4 days over $150,000. 4 days, which I was shocked at. The next thing we did was we had a meeting of all the experts. You recognize some of these people. You see them, Dr. Bogosh there, you see him on TV every day. We got these experts together, and we talked about COVID, and we broadcast this to China. What is it we know about COVID that we can get from the experts, that we can plan for it? So we did that as an educational, not only for us, but for China as well. Next slide, please. We then had the idea of shipping these ECMO devices that we ended up purchasing to China. And we got a group together of all these volunteers, and we made that happen. Shipping to China of this device was at least $16,000. So that was more than we had budgeted for. So we approached, at one of our functions, a man from Hainan Airlines came up to me and said, if you ever need any trip to China or at a reduced cost, we could help you. And I didn't need a cost for me or any of our group, But we needed this equipment to go to China. So Hainan Airlines shipped it for free to China. And when they shipped it, this group here took it out to the airport, and the Hainan Airlines said, wait, we can't take the batteries with us. But we worked and talked to them, and they were able to take the batteries ultimately. And the remarkable thing, and I find this incredibly remarkable, at Spirit, that we were able to do this in 14 days. We raised $150,000, got these machines, and got the free transportation and had them delivered to Wuhan, China. And within 14 days of the idea, they were actually being employed in China. And every time they're used, you've got to remember, 7 out of 10 patients that are used, if they're used 100 times, 70 lives would be saved. So here's the group at the airport, and I donated 20,000 masks, but that was not something they absolutely needed, but there was a big push on for masks at the time. So that's what we did. We felt pretty good about that. Next slide, please. So there they are. There's the machines all loaded. They're loaded with the Bethune Medical and the University of Toronto Global Surgery, and we felt pretty happy about that because we'd had an idea, we'd followed it through, we had the spirit, and we had the action. Next slide, please. Then the surprise came for us. A surprise from all the people that heard about this. We got sent from China, courtesy of a lot of different people, the Bank of China, Huawei, various organizations, which I'll list here in a moment, gave us PPE, hats, gowns, gloves, glasses, boots, all the things you needed. Because you may remember in April, May of last year, we were in very short supply of PPE in the GTA because the supply chain didn't count on using 10 times the amount of PPE we normally do. So we had 16 trailer trucks of PPE, $4 million worth retail were brought to us, and we shipped them off. There's the president of the Bank of China showing us what they brought in boxes and boxes, and all the volunteers distributed those to the various hospitals. Next slide, please. And this got announced on the CBC, and next slide, please. And here, we'll stick on this for a while. These are the people that donated: the Bank of China, Huawei, Fuwai Education Foundation, Cultural Center, the Chinese students and parents of McMaster in Toronto, Gansu Federation, the alumni of the Capital University, Toronto alumni of Jiantong University, Spine of Shandong, the Yabu Puschelberg. This is something, the Yabu Puschelberg is a architectural company that designs things. I mean, but they heard about us and they asked us if we'd help them donate. And Mr. Li Lu, we donated them to the medical institutions, 17 of them, all of Toronto universities and various in Hamilton, McGill, Ottawa University, Waterloo, and also to the long-term healthcare, all those 8 of the long-term centers. So that was pretty good. Next slide, please. And that took us probably up all of April to deliver all that stuff because we kept on getting more and more and more. And at the time, Canada wiped out waived the restrictions that you had to bring them in, the PPE, because there was in such desperate need. There was no custom duty or tax. So it was just, they came to us, I signed for it, and then we distributed them. It was very easy. We also did other things along the way, and I can't list them all, but we organized or helped organize 17 different seminars that were broadcast in China to sometimes 800,000, 2,000 people. We did that. There's some examples: the International Vascular Medicine, Cardiovascular, the Vaccine Virtual Forum. We also did one other here in Canada, that we had high school students write essays on how they felt discriminated because they're Asian in the time of COVID. And that was, for me, very educational. Very educational because obviously I'm not Chinese. I have a Chinese name, but I'm not Chinese. And that brought to me the attention of there's discrimination that occurs just because you're Chinese, and after people who are ignorant of the facts of the world, like Mr. Trump, called it the Wuhan virus and things like that. Anyway, we did those throughout the year, and they were very successful and actually very well received in terms of the Chinese participation, and that maintained our relationship with the Chinese that we've developed over the last 20 years or so. Next slide, please. The ideas of all of this, of the spirit of Norman Bethune, and however he came by it, was to educate, provide some sort of service, which we do medically, and leave something behind. Leave something behind so that we can maintain a sustainable relationship, one that doesn't stop and one that only builds. Thank you.
Thank you so much for such a heartwarming and touching sharing, Dr. Lee. And for us, I think for all of us today, we know that Dr. Bethune is not only a historic icon, and I think you and all your colleagues and all other frontline medical professionals, you are modern Bethune. And thank you so much for your devotions and tireless effort to raise the fund, to make the donation, and to help the people who are in need. So thank you, and thank you for all the supporters of you. And we wish all the best to the Bethune Medical Development Association of Canada. And we hope the CNIW could have more opportunities to work together with you in the future. And I think for humanity, for love, just to safeguard all the health and well-being of all of us. So thank you.